Hey everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining me. Just getting the stream started here, and we'll jump right into it. Today I'm going to be doing a dashboard review. I know we've been doing these quite a bit lately, and I think this is going to be a fun one. I'm just getting everything set up here. Just give me 1 second. How do I close the chat? I don't know how. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to put this in the right category, because right now we're listed in science and technology, and I think we should be listed in maybe education or entertainment, gaming. I don't know what category we fit into. If anybody has tips on which category we should put these in, let me know. I'll do education. Why not? No, is there a business category? Maybe how to and style? We'll just see what happens. I have no idea what categories really do when we're making stuff or when we're doing streams. YouTube categories never really made any sense to me anyways. So let's hop right into it. Looks like Mike is working and we're ready to go. So everyone, thank you so much for joining today. I'm doing another round of dashboard reviews. I really enjoyed the last one we did. We looked at kind of an e-commerce type dashboard that I built a while ago. This is another dashboard that I've built that we'll be reviewing. I still am waiting to get some dashboards submitted by you guys that we can review, but I don't want to review anybody on the internet's dashboards without actually getting their permission first. So I figured we'll start with mine. We can critique it as harshly as we want because I'm the only person who might be offended by it. So what I'm going to do is go over this NPS dashboard that I built. NPS, for anyone who doesn't know, is this question you see above me. How likely is it that you would recommend product X or brand X to a friend or colleague? If you've ever answered that question before, you have participated in a NPS survey. And it is a extensively studied metric that is correlated pretty highly with business performance. It's used extremely widely across almost every industry. Anything where you care about how people feel about your brand, it's going to have used an NPS score at some point. So we built this using a set of sample data. Let me show that to you. Give me a second here. Data. This is data that I literally just generated using, I think, ChatGPT or something. I just needed a nice set of data. I couldn't find a good one online. And this is the kind of thing ChatGPT is really good at making. So basically it would be comments, a score, or a rating. In this case, if it was associated with a purchase, because a lot of times you get this question and it's associated with a purchase that you've made. And a date and customer ID is kind of the data we're working with here. I believe I did calculated columns for detractor, passive, and promoter, and I'll explain what all that is in just a second. Let me go back over to the dashboard. Okay, so essentially how this is calculated is folks give a score. They give a number between 0 and 10. So whether 10 being you're very, very likely to recommend it, 0 being you're not going to recommend it at all. And then you classify each person based on that score. So promoters, I believe, are, here I wrote it down, a 9 or 10. Passives are 7 or 8. And everyone beneath that is considered a detractor. And then really all we're doing is taking the percentage of detractors and removing it or subtracting it from the percentage of promoters. And that gives us a score. So in theory, I guess your lowest possible score would be negative 100%. Your highest would be positive would be positive 100%. You want to hop down? Okay, sorry, my cat's ready to hop down. And you typically obviously want this to be higher the better. So that's how the number works, just for anyone curious. When I was thinking through this dashboard, I was thinking of a few things. One is we don't always know whether or not somebody is actually familiar with NPS scores. In general, I try to avoid acronyms, I try to avoid corporate jargon, and I try to avoid anything that might make somebody feel like they don't know enough as a general rule. So if somebody is coming into a dashboard or report like this, and they're just like, I'm not sure what NPS is, I'm not sure what's going on with the number, I kind of want to be able to answer that question in the dashboard itself. And NPS, despite people having heard the acronym and having maybe used it here or there, most people don't actually know how it all works. So I've really spelled that out. We put the question that represents what the NPS score is up here. We put a little explanation. We gave explanations for all the supplemental metrics. We gave lots of context here so that people really know what they're looking at, because that's such an important part of all this. One note I'm making to myself here is that I might actually do something like this in the future, which is actually put a Net Promoter Score on here. And then maybe do something like this. This is just literally spelling it out for someone, right? We'd have to obviously change our text size and adjust our design and everything, but I think this might actually be helpful. And from my experience, you're almost always going to be better off just outright explaining something to people than making any assumptions about how much they know. So I would actually spell this out instead of just putting the acronym and adjust the design accordingly. I think this makes sense that we have large text in the upper left that gives important context. I always talk about screen real estate and how each area of the screen really has a different level of kind of initial importance. So people tend to go to the upper left first. Oh, hold on, my cats are bullying each other. Give me 1 second, folks. I gotta separate the cats. Hey, Mo, stop bullying your brother, sir. Stop bullying your brother. That's not nice. Don't be a meanie. Okay. Sorry about that. All right, back to it. So that upper left section is kind of critically important real estate, and it's where you either want to be giving context or putting the first thing you want someone to see. Then we've visually distinguished this part of the page. It has a big giant circle around it. It has a different color. The text is bigger. So that's probably where somebody's eye is going to go to next. In this case, I think that's the right move, and it's just the score. Now, at this point, they might not know what the score is. They might need more information and all of that, but I think that's okay. We want to just give it to them right up front. If somebody's just looking at this at a glance, we want to answer their question. There's some supplemental data down here on how much it has changed since the previous month. In this case, the data is going to be reported monthly, and a little diagram showing it over time, a trend line. The trend line should probably be labeled. In fact, it definitely should be labeled because this is hard to interpret. When you have a trend line that's unlabeled like this, really all it's telling you is kind of the general direction and variability of the data, which is very hard to interpret. So just with a little bit of labeling here, I think that chart is quite valuable. And then we have the lifetime average beneath it. So the exercise we're doing here is saying, all right, what's the NPS score? For somebody who already knows what the NPS score is, the first thing they're going to ask is, how much has it changed? How has it changed over time? Is it way higher or way lower than it is over time? And we could answer that with a line chart here, which we would better label. And then what is our overall average score, and how are we above or below that? Just some really obvious first questions somebody might ask looking at this, and we can just answer those by working them into this initial section here. All right, give me 1 second. Let me zoom out. I'm still learning how to do this whole zoom thing. So that's where your eye's drawn first. Then first thing somebody's going to do is come up here and kind of be like, all right, well then what's all this information? Now, for folks who don't know about NPS scores, they're definitely going to need this explainer at the top. Respondents answer this question with a number between 0 and 10, which is used to classify them as promoters, passives, and detractors. I think it is logical enough that we are talking about this question here being answered, and this is the explanation of how the responses are recorded. And that gives somebody who maybe doesn't know the context they need to understand this stuff here. Now, obviously, we have a very tiny data set here. You would not be making big decisions on NPS score based off of a tiny set of responses like this. But the reason I'm surfacing this over here is because the way you interpret this score, how important you make this score, the decisions you make of it based off of it, have a lot to do with how many people actually responded. And breaking this down just to give people a sense of what went into the score is actually really helpful, I think, in this case, and almost a requirement. So knowing how many promoters, passives, and detractors, the number of people classified in those categories, I think is actually really, really good here. We also gave that little supplementary bit of information here about what puts somebody in each of these categories. Again, I'm on board with this. And you can also see in this case that our charts are properly labeled. Everything's labeled. We have the time series on the bottom. We have each individual metric. And that's the kind of labeling we might want to do over here. Obviously, we don't have as much space on the left, but it would probably be worthwhile in this case to do that kind of labeling. Hey, sorry, my cat's meowing. You okay, buddy? You want to come over here? He just wants me to give him treats. Okay, so, all right. We then it gives you a sense of the amount of responses that went into the calculation of the score and the overall number of people in each category. There's one other reason in this case I feel comfortable with adding in the number of people in each of these categories, or not even feel comfortable, that I think it's actually good. And that's that the way that NPS score is calculated is a little counterintuitive, meaning promoters are 9 and 10, passes are 7 or 8, and then everybody beneath that is a detractor. It's like kind of a weird grading system, you know? It's like almost like the US grading system in schools or something. And people don't really know that oftentimes. And if you look at this score and you're like, man, we have a small number of people in promoters and a small number of people in detractors, but a ton of passives, that's going to very much change the way you interpret the result. Because it's grouped into these very narrow, like, well, these two categories are only 2 numbers and the bottom category is 6 numbers. Like, it's good to actually have that all surfaced, because it's the kind of questions people always ask when they first get exposed to an NPS score. So right now I'm not being super critical of this, other than some of my labeling issues and stuff, but I think overall I was actually quite happy with how this turned out. But let's get into a little more of a critical eye here. So the first thing people complain about when I posted this publicly last time was this visual back here. You see how there's these kind of like bar charts behind here? This is a thing that I do sometimes, or excuse me, donut charts behind here. This is a thing I do sometimes, which is I add in a design element that is actually powered by data. So these charts are actually powered by the NPS score, the current and previous NPS score. Now, I've tried to make them subtle enough that nobody's going to immediately look at this and try to interpret the charts or think that they're anything. I've really used them just as a design element here, but when I can have a design element that is somehow tied to real data, I like to do it just because. And look, that's contentious. Not everyone is going to agree with that, but in this situation, I thought it was appropriate. It doesn't necessarily hurt anything. It's not taking away from how somebody's going to interact with this dashboard. And for me, at least, I like knowing that, hey, I have actually taken the time to think about the data that might be tied to each of these little visual elements that I've worked in. Not a requirement, not something everybody needs to do, but just something I like to consider when I'm building things out. So I'm going to say that's okay in this case, but be cautious about doing this yourself, because if there is something that's obviously a chart, people are just going to ask, what is that chart? How does it work? And get confused. So you got to be a little careful about that stuff. The other big one here, and this is something that there's a glaring element missing here. If anybody wants to try to drop something in the chat for which element they think is missing, I would love to see if anybody has spotted this as well. But there's a glaringly obvious opportunity to include something here that's not included. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat. I don't think we have enough people in the stream to get a response here, but let me just give you the answer. So the glaringly obvious and valuable thing we could add to this is actual text and insights from the responses themselves. I get asked a lot of questions about dealing with qualitative, like response type survey data and how to integrate it into people's reports in Excel. It's not an easy process, and that's why you rarely see people actually do it. But if we look at our responses here, if we really started to dig in here, hold on, let me zoom in so y'all can see this better. There are probably going to be opportunities to pull out certain themes, insights, terminology, whatever, from people in each category, from promoters, detractors, and passives. So when you're trying to interpret an NPS score and you're wondering, hey, why did our NPS score drop? Why did it increase? The first thing you're going to do is go to the people in each category and read their responses to see what types of things they mention. Literally the first thing you're going to do. And in the spirit of figuring out what is the first question your audience is going to ask and answer it, that's kind of how I'm thinking about this. Pulling out these comments is going to be a little tricky. Displaying them is going to be a little tricky. And finding themes within them is going to be a little tricky. I don't want to turn this into a tutorial video because we're doing a dashboard review video today, but let me go back and we'll just show. What I think I am going to consider doing here is maybe making some changes to our layout or reserving some space down here. And what we would do is go to our table, look through our comments. Okay, we see what's in there. Create a series of pivot tables that filter down all of the responses for each person in each category, meaning a table that is filtered down responses for somebody in the promoter group, the passive group, and the detractor group, and pull all those out as text. What we might be able to do to keep it simple is go back to our dashboard. We might be able to literally integrate those here beneath the dashboard because we have a little bit of space down here and it's flexible. We might need to consider that though because of the text length. Displaying long text that's dynamic can get a little tricky. But I think including some of those responses from each category down here might be a good idea. The other way to go about this is to start trying to pull out terms. Now, I have not done this in a long time, and frankly, I don't even really remember how to do it, but there are ways that you can look at a text string and pull out frequency of terms from the text stream, and then we might be able to integrate the frequency of terms into a visual. That's another potential option here. Either way, when I see something like this and I'm happy with how it looks overall, I'm happy with the insights in it, but there's a big glaring missed opportunity, like including terminology or including text insights from the responses in the survey. I think it's always worth taking a little time to consider how you could integrate those. Sometimes it's not possible, particularly with survey data, which is text. It's not always going to be an option to integrate that into Excel, but it is something that's worth exploring and playing with. And in fact, I will probably do a video after this where we start playing with some ways to pull insights from survey responses from this dashboard. I'll post a video later where we get into all that. Anyway, that is a quick dashboard review of this NPS dashboard. Hopefully there are some useful insights for folks out there who want to build their own NPS dashboard or start exploring this stuff themselves. This one I did send out to the newsletter already. I'll probably send it out to the newsletter again at some point for everybody new. If you have questions about it, just drop them in the comments section, and I'll try to get a response out to everyone. I'm not as good about responding on YouTube, but I'll do my best. The other thing I would add here is if you do want to go deeper on this stuff, I may do a little discussion on the Discord about it. You're welcome to hop on over there. And if you're somebody looking for any of that stuff, the Discord, the Patreon, any of the links to any of the social media stuff, all of that is over on my profile. You can find all of it there. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. This was just a quick, fun little stream. And I think we'll continue doing some of these dashboard reviews moving forward if folks continue to enjoy them. If you want me to do anything differently, please let me know. My cats are bullying each other again, so I got to go stop my cats. But I'm going to end the stream here. Thank you for tuning in. Lovely to have you all. Bye for now.